The Middle Ages, spanning from the 5th to the 15th centuries, stand as a pivotal epoch in European history. This era, often misunderstood, was a time of significant transformation and development. Often perceived as a dark age, this period was far from static. It was a time of dynamic change where the seeds of modern Europe were sown. Instead, it witnessed profound transformations, shaping the continent's political, social, and cultural landscape. The bustling markets and skilled craftsmen of the time were testament to a vibrant and evolving society. From the fall of the Roman Empire to the dawn of the Renaissance, medieval Europe experienced dramatic shifts in power, faith, and knowledge. These changes laid the groundwork for the modern world. The early Middle Ages saw the rise of new Germanic kingdoms from the ashes of Roman rule. These kingdoms, with their own unique cultures and traditions, began to shape the future of Europe. Christianity spread, gradually becoming the dominant religion of Western Europe. The Church played a central role in unifying the diverse peoples of the continent. Monasteries emerged as centers of learning, safeguarding classical texts amidst widespread upheaval. These institutions preserved knowledge and fostered intellectual growth during turbulent times. The concept of feudalism took root, binding lords and vassals in a complex web of obligations and land ownership. This system defined the social and economic structure of medieval Europe. As centuries passed, medieval Europe flourished. Towns and cities grew, and festivals became a common feature of life, reflecting the prosperity and cultural richness of the period. Grand cathedrals, architectural marvels of their time, rose in cities and towns. These structures were not only places of worship but also symbols of the era's artistic and engineering achievements. Knights bound by chivalry and honor became symbols of military prowess. Their tournaments and battles were both a form of entertainment and a demonstration of martial skill. Universities were established, fostering intellectual debate and the rediscovery of classical thought. These institutions became the breeding grounds for new ideas and innovations. Trade routes expanded, connecting Europe to the East and bringing new goods, ideas, and cultural influences. This exchange enriched European society and spurred economic growth. However, the late Middle Ages brought about new challenges. The period was marked by significant hardships that tested the resilience of the people. The Black Death, a devastating pandemic, ravaged Europe, leaving a trail of death and social upheaval in its wake. This catastrophe had profound effects on the population and the social fabric. Peasant revolts challenged the established order. These uprisings were a response to the harsh conditions and injustices faced by the lower classes. The 100 Years' War between England and France reshaped the political map. This prolonged conflict had lasting impacts on both nations and their people. Yet amidst these trials, the seeds of change were being sown. Innovations in agriculture and scholarship began to take root, paving the way for future advancements. A renewed interest in classical art, literature, and philosophy began to emerge, setting the stage for the transformative era of the Renaissance. This revival of ancient knowledge and creativity marked the end of the medieval period and the beginning of a new age. The political map of medieval Europe was a complex and ever-changing tapestry, woven with threads of ambition, conquest, and religious fervor. This period, often referred to as the Middle Ages, spanned roughly from the 5th to the late 15th century and saw the rise and fall of numerous political entities. Unlike the unified Roman Empire that preceded it, the Middle Ages were characterized by a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and independent city-states, each vying for power and influence. These entities were often in conflict, but also engaged in alliances and marriages to strengthen their positions. In the wake of Rome's decline, Germanic tribes carved out new territories. These tribes, such as the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and Vandals, played a crucial role in shaping the early medieval political landscape. The Franks, under Charlemagne, established a vast empire encompassing much of modern-day France, Germany, and Italy. Charlemagne's reign marked a significant consolidation of power and the revival of the title of Emperor in the West. The Anglo-Saxons forged kingdoms in England while the Visigoths ruled in Spain. These kingdoms laid the foundations for the modern nations of England and Spain, respectively. To the east, the Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, preserved Roman traditions and became a bastion of Eastern Christianity. The Byzantines maintained a sophisticated bureaucracy and military, which allowed them to exert influence over the Eastern Mediterranean for centuries. Feudalism, a system of mutual obligation and landholding, shaped the political structure of medieval Europe. This system was based on the exchange of land for military service and loyalty, creating a network of allegiances that bound lords and vassals together. Kings granted land, known as fiefs, to nobles in exchange for military service and loyalty. These nobles, or vassals, were expected to provide knights and soldiers to their king when called upon. These nobles, in turn, subdivided their lands among lesser lords, creating a hierarchical chain of command. This system ensured that even the smallest landholders had obligations to those above them, reinforcing the feudal structure. The Catholic Church, a powerful force in medieval society, also held vast tracts of land and wielded considerable political influence. The Church's authority extended beyond spiritual matters, often involving itself in the governance of kingdoms and the appointment of rulers. Throughout the Middle Ages, kingdoms rose and fell, borders shifted, and alliances were forged and broken. This constant flux was driven by wars, marriages, and treaties which continually reshaped the political map of Europe. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 transformed English society and politics. Led by William the Conqueror, the Normans introduced new administrative systems and reshaped the English aristocracy. The Crusades, a series of religious wars fought between Christians and Muslims, expanded European horizons and fueled trade. These expeditions not only aimed to reclaim the Holy Land, but also opened new routes for commerce and cultural exchange. The 100 Years' War, a protracted conflict between England and France, reshaped the political landscape of Western Europe. This war, spanning over a century, saw significant developments in military tactics and the rise of national identities. Feudalism, the dominant social and political system of medieval Europe, resembled a vast pyramid, with power flowing downward from the king to the lowest serf. This hierarchical structure was not just a political system, but also a way of life that influenced every aspect of medieval society. This intricate web of relationships revolved around land ownership, military service, and loyalty. Land was the primary source of wealth and power, and the control of land determined one's status and influence within the feudal hierarchy. At the apex of this hierarchy stood the king, the ultimate landowner and dispenser of power. The king's authority was often seen as divinely ordained, giving him a sacred status that reinforced his position at the top of the social order. He granted land known as fiefs to his most trusted nobles, often relatives or close allies. These grants were not just gifts, but were given in exchange for services, particularly military support. These nobles in turn became his vassals, swearing oaths of fealty and pledging to provide military support in times of war. This relationship was formalized through ceremonies and contracts, creating a bond of mutual obligation. This exchange of land for loyalty formed the bedrock of the feudal system. It was a system built on trust and mutual benefit, where the vassal's loyalty was rewarded with land and protection. Beneath the king and his great lords stood lesser nobles, each holding land from a superior lord. These lesser nobles managed smaller estates and had their own vassals, creating a multi-layered hierarchy. These vassals, in turn, might grant portions of their estates to even lesser nobles, creating a complex chain of obligation and service. This system allowed for a decentralized form of governance, where local lords had significant autonomy. At the base of the pyramid toiled the peasantry, who made up the vast majority of the population. These peasants, or serfs, were bound to the land and had limited rights, working tirelessly to sustain the upper classes. They worked the land, providing food and labor for their lords, and were bound to the land, unable to leave without permission. Their lives were marked by hard labor and little personal freedom, yet they were essential to the feudal economy. Feudalism provided a degree of stability and order in a time of frequent warfare and political fragmentation. The system ensured that everyone knew their place and their duties, which helped maintain social order. It created a system of mutual obligation, where each level of society depended on the one above it for protection and support. This interdependence was crucial for survival in a time when external threats were common. However, it was also a system rife with inequality, where the vast majority of the population lived in poverty and had little opportunity for social advancement. The rigid class structure meant that social mobility was nearly impossible, and the gap between the rich and the poor was vast. Section 4. A peasant's life, toiling the land and answering the Lord's call. For the vast majority of people in medieval Europe, life revolved around the rhythms of the agricultural calendar. Peasants bound to the land by the feudal system constituted the backbone of the medieval economy, their labor sustaining the lords and ladies of the manor. Life for a peasant was one of unceasing toil, their days filled with ploughing, sowing and harvesting. They lived in simple one-room dwellings, often sharing their meager space with livestock. Their diet consisted mainly of bread, porridge and vegetables, with meat a rare luxury. Disease was rampant and life expectancy was short. Peasants were obligated to their lord in countless ways. They paid rent in the form of crops or labor, worked the lord's fields in addition to their own, and were subject to various taxes and fees. In times of war, they might be called upon to fight for their lord, leaving their families and fields behind. Despite the hardships, peasants found solace in their communities, celebrating religious festivals and marking the changing seasons with communal gatherings. They possessed a deep knowledge of the land and its rhythms, passed down through generations of experience. Their lives, though difficult by modern standards, were an integral part of the medieval world, their labor sustaining the castles and cathedrals that defined the era. Section 5. Within castle walls, the privileged world of the nobility. In stark contrast to the hard-scrabble existence of the peasantry, the nobility inhabited a world of privilege and power. Living in fortified castles, often perched atop hills or strategic river crossings, they commanded the surrounding lands and its inhabitants. Castles served as both residences and strongholds, their thick walls and imposing towers offering protection from rival lords and invaders. Within these stone walls, nobles lived lives of relative ease, their days filled with hunting, feasting, and engaging in courtly pursuits. Noble women, though largely excluded from political power, played vital roles in managing households, raising children, and upholding social customs. They were expected to be skilled in needlework, music, and dancing, and to possess the refinement and grace befitting their station. The lives of nobles were not without their dangers and obligations. Warfare was a constant threat, and nobles were expected to be skilled warriors, leading their men into battle. They were also responsible for administering justice, maintaining order, and upholding the feudal system that granted them their privileged position.